On the night of the 24th of September, 867, a Byzantine emperor lay drunk and asleep in his own palace in Constantinople. His name was Michael III, the most powerful man in the Eastern Roman world, ruler of an empire that stretched from the walls of the capital to the deserts of the Near East. His armies had beaten back the Arabs, his court glittered, and that night, in his private bedchamber, he was completely, fatally safe, or so he believed. The locks on his door had been quietly tampered with. The guards who should have stood outside had been sent away, and the man who arranged all of it was not a foreign spy, not a rival general, not an assassin sent by an enemy kingdom. It was his best friend, a man Michael had pulled up out of nothing, a peasant, a horse tamer, a nobody from the provinces who had caught the emperor's eye and won his heart. Michael had loaded him with titles, given him a palace, even arranged his marriage. Just the year before, he had done the unthinkable, crowned this man co-emperor, made him his equal, the second most powerful person in the entire empire. There was no gift left to give, and on that September night, that same friend walked into the bedchamber with a handful of accomplices and had the sleeping emperor cut down where he lay. By morning, the friend wore the crown alone. Here's what you need to understand before we go further. The person most able to destroy you is almost never a stranger. Strangers don't have the access. They don't know where you're weak, where you're proud, where you're asleep. The people who can truly ruin you are the ones you've let close, the ones who've watched you, learned you, and quietly grown to resent everything you gave them. There's an old line attributed to Voltaire: "Protect me from my friends. My enemies, I can handle myself." It sounds like a joke. It isn't. It's one of the oldest, coldest observations about power ever written down, and I'm going to show you exactly why it's true, using real history. An emperor who trusted a friend and died for it. Two bitter enemies who joined forces and outlived a legend. And a warlord who understood this rule so completely that the dynasty he built lasted 300 years. Because the rule underneath all of it is this: never put too much trust in friends and learn how to use your enemies. Get it wrong, and the knife comes from the one direction you never thought to guard. Get it right, and you turn the people who hate you into the most loyal force you have. Let's start with the emperor who got it wrong, because his story isn't just about betrayal, it's about why the betrayal was almost guaranteed the moment he handed his friend everything. Before Basil the Macedonian was an emperor, he was nothing. Born to a poor family out in the provinces, probably of Armenian stock, far from the marble and gold of the capital. As a young man, he made his way to Constantinople with almost nothing to his name except a powerful body and a rare gift for handling horses. That gift changed everything. Basil became known as a man who could tame any animal, and he wrestled, and he won. Word reached the court, and the young Emperor Michael, restless, pleasure-loving, always hunting for a companion who amused him, took a liking to this strong, charming outsider and made him his attendant, his confidant, his bodyguard. Understand what that meant to Basil. He had come from dirt. Now he was sleeping in the palace, eating at the emperor's side, closer to power than men born into the highest families of the empire. Everything he had, he owed to Michael. Michael didn't stop giving. When there was a delicate matter with the emperor's mistress, Michael had Basil marry her, folding him deeper into the intimate machinery of the throne. And when Michael's own uncle, a powerful man named Bardas, stood in the way, it was Basil who helped remove him. Bardas was murdered in 866, and the last real check on Basil's rise was gone. Then came the final gift, the one no ruler in his right mind gives away. In 866, Michael crowned Basil co-emperor. Not just rich, not just noble, a partner in the throne itself. Basil was now, on paper, Michael's equal. And here the psychology turns. This is the exact moment the danger became lethal. A man who's been given everything doesn't feel gratitude forever. He feels the weight of the debt. He realizes that everything he has can be taken back by the same hand that gave it, and that realization curdles. Basil had reached the top. There was only one seat higher than his, and only one person sitting in it. Then Michael made his last mistake. He grew fond of another courtier, a man named Basiliskianos, and began to favor him, even joking he might raise this new favorite up too, might crown him as well. To Michael, it may have been a whim, a drunk emperor needling the men around him. To Basil, it was a death sentence pointed at his own future. If the emperor could make one favorite, he could unmake another. The hand that had lifted Basil could drop him. And Basil decided not to wait to find out. He didn't challenge Michael in the open. He didn't raise an army. He used the one thing his position had bought him that no enemy could ever have: total, intimate access. He knew the palace, the emperor's habits, his drinking, the layout of his rooms, the schedule of the guards. He compromised the locks. He arranged for the guards to be gone, and after a long night of drinking, when Michael was insensible, Basil came in with his men and had him killed, brutally by the accounts that survive. Basil walked out the sole ruler of the Roman world. He founded the Macedonian dynasty, which would rule for nearly 2 centuries and become one of the most celebrated lines in Byzantine history. He turned out to be an effective, even respected emperor. History rewarded the murderer, but strip away the crown and look at the raw mechanism, because this is the lesson, and it's a cold one. Michael was not destroyed by an enemy. He was destroyed by the man he trusted most, and the trust itself was the weapon. Every gift he gave brought Basil closer to the throne and deeper into the resentment that comes from owing everything to another man. The favors didn't buy loyalty. They built a rival. That's the whole law standing in front of you in a single ruined bedchamber. Never put too much trust in friends. The friend you elevate without limit doesn't love you more for it. He measures the distance between where he stands and where you stand, and starts to wonder why you're still above him. Now, you might be thinking that's ancient history, emperors, daggers, palace intrigue. What does a 900-year-old murder have to do with your job, your life, the people around you right now? Everything. Because the mechanism that killed Michael runs quietly in every office, every partnership, every friendship you bring into your work. Let me show you how it actually works, and why favors, of all things, are the trap. Here's the uncomfortable truth about hiring, promoting, or leaning on a friend. It feels safe. The world is harsh and full of strangers, and when you need help, you reach for someone you already know. You trust them because you like them. You assume warmth means reliability, but you don't know your friends as well as you think. Friendship runs on a kind of gentle dishonesty. Friends smooth things over, agree to avoid conflict, tell you your plan is great to keep the peace. So the version you know is partly a performance of agreement. You've never seen them under the pressure of working for you, competing with you, watching you get something they wanted. Then there's the deeper trap, the one that caught Michael. When you do a friend a great favor, hire them, promote them, rescue them, you expect gratitude to bind them to you. It does the opposite. People want to feel they earned their place, that their good fortune came from their own worth, not your charity. So when the favor is too large, it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a debt, a heavy, resentful thing to carry. Your kindness quietly unbalances the relationship. Where you were equals, now one of you gives and one receives, and the receiver feels it every day. The resentment leaks out slowly, a flash of envy, a bitter comment, a strange coldness. And the instinct, when a friend pulls away, is to give them more, which only deepens the debt. This is why the friend is more dangerous than the stranger. The stranger you hire owes you nothing emotionally and knows why he's there, to do a job. The friend arrives tangled in feelings, expectations, and the slow poison of an unpayable debt. And he arrives with something an enemy never has. He knows you. He knows your weaknesses because you showed them back when you thought you were safe. He knows where the locks are. He knows when you're asleep. Now flip it around, because the second half of this law is where it stops being a warning and becomes a weapon. If friends are unreliable because they're comfortable and entitled, the opposite is also true. A former enemy, someone you win over, someone you give a chance, arrives with none of the entitlement and all of the hunger. He doesn't assume your loyalty. He knows he has to prove himself, so he works to earn it. A person with something to prove will move mountains for you. A comfortable friend won't move a chair, so the rule has 2 edges. Watch your friends more carefully than your enemies, because they can betray you faster and never see it as betrayal, only as balancing a debt they never asked for. And when you find an enemy you can win over, take him. because his need to prove himself will make him more loyal than any friend. Let me show you the second half in action. Two men who spent years hating each other in public and then discovered that an enemy turned to your purpose can be worth more than any ally you were born with. Paris, the early 1800s. Napoleon Bonaparte sits at the height of his power, master of most of Europe, and around him circle the two most dangerous political minds in France. The first is Talleyrand, a limping, silky, aristocratic diplomat, a former bishop who survived the revolution by sheer cunning and who served Napoleon as foreign minister. The second is Joseph Fouché, Napoleon's Minister of Police, a cold former revolutionary with a vast network of informers and blood on his hands from the Terror. These two despised each other. For years they were open rivals, trading insults and undermining each other across the salons and corridors of power. Ask anyone in Paris and they'd tell you Talleyrand and Fouché were natural enemies who could never work together, permanent antagonists. Then, in the winter of 1808 into 1809, something happened that stunned the French court. Napoleon was away in Spain, mired in a war Talleyrand privately believed was leading France to ruin. And there was a real danger over the whole country. Napoleon had no clear heir. If he died in Spain, France would tear itself apart in a scramble for the succession. To handle a problem that large, Talleyrand needed a partner as powerful and clear-eyed as himself. And the one man in France who saw the danger the way he did, who had the network, the nerve, and the reach to act, was his enemy, Fouché. So the two of them did the thing no one thought possible. They reconciled. They were seen together, arm in arm, in public, sworn enemies suddenly whispering as allies. They began to discuss what should happen if Napoleon fell. It was, in the words of one historian, treachery on a magnificent scale. When Napoleon heard that Talleyrand and Fouché, of all people, were meeting, he reacted with instant alarm. He understood at once that if those two had stopped fighting, something serious was happening. He rushed back from Spain and in front of his assembled officials, unleashed one of the most famous public tongue lashings in European political history, tearing into Talleyrand as a traitor. He stripped him of his ministry. They didn't unseat Napoleon in that moment, but watch the longer arc, because this is where the law pays off. Talleyrand had learned to use an enemy, and it kept him in the game for the rest of the era. When Napoleon's empire finally collapsed after the disasters in Russia and Spain, it was Talleyrand who was there in Paris to welcome the victorious allies and negotiate terms for France at the Great Congress that followed. Napoleon died in exile on a distant island. Talleyrand died a prince, still shaping the future of France. Here's the maxim, drawn straight from what those two men did. Enemies aren't just threats to be destroyed. An enemy is a resource. A person whose interests can, in the right moment, be lined up with yours. Talleyrand didn't need Fouché to love him. He needed Fouché's power aimed in the same direction as his own. Shared self-interest is a stronger bond than friendship, because it doesn't depend on warmth, only on both of you wanting the same thing. And a former enemy brought to your side works harder than a friend because he's proving the alliance was worth making. You destroy an enemy most completely not by killing him, but by making him useful. The rival who becomes your partner is no longer a rival at all. The emperor at the start trusted a friend and died. Talleyrand used an enemy and survived a legend. But there's a third way to play this, the deepest version of the law. And it belongs to a man who grasped something almost no ruler ever has. That the greatest threat to your power isn't your enemies at all. It's the friends who helped you get to the top. China, the year 960. The great Tang dynasty had collapsed decades earlier, and the country had spent half a century tearing itself apart. Emperors rose and fell like weather, and the pattern was always the same. A powerful general raised up by his own troops, seizing the throne, ruling a few years, then overthrown by the next ambitious general with an army behind him. Power was a revolving door soaked in blood. Into this chaos stepped a commander named Zhao Kuang-yin. When a child was left on the throne, his own soldiers did to him what soldiers had done a dozen times before, draped the yellow imperial robe over his shoulders and hailed him emperor. He took the throne and founded a new dynasty, the Song. Now put yourself in his position. He just watched, for 50 years, how this story ends. He knew exactly how he'd come to power. His generals, his friends, his loyal comrades had lifted him up. And those same men could lift up someone else tomorrow. The people closest to him, the ones who'd put the crown on his head, had the armies and the proven willingness to make an emperor. They weren't his enemies. That was the problem. They were his friends, and that made them the deadliest force in the empire. Most rulers, gripped by that fear, reach for the sword. They start executing the men who helped them, purging loyalists, terrifying everyone else into rebellion, and start the whole bloody cycle over again. Zhao Guangyin did something far smarter. In 961, he invited his top generals, the very men who had raised him up, to a banquet. He filled their cups, and over the wine, instead of accusing or threatening them, he spoke honestly. He told them the burden of ruling kept him awake at night because any one of them might one day have the imperial robe thrown over his shoulders by ambitious troops, whether he wanted it or not, exactly as it had happened to Zhao himself. He wasn't wrong, and they knew it. Then he offered a deal. Give up your commands, retire. In exchange, take wealth, honors, fine estates, comfortable and dignified lives, and let's bind our families together in marriage so we're allies, not rivals. Lay down the one thing that makes you dangerous to me, your armies, and I'll make the rest of your life rich and safe. They took it. The next morning, the most powerful generals in the empire pleaded illness, resigned their commands, and retired to lives of luxury. Not one of them was killed. In a single evening, over cups of wine, Zhao Guangyin had removed the exact threat that had toppled every regime before his, the friends and comrades with the power to unmake him. Historians remember it with the phrase, "The imperial power was won and secured with a cup of wine." And here's the payoff that proves he was right. Every dynasty before his had lasted a handful of years before some general tore it down. The dynasty Zhao founded lasted over 300 years. Look at what he understood that Michael the Byzantine emperor never did. Michael's killer was the friend he raised too high. Zhao faced the same danger, a whole room of friends he'd raised too high. And instead of trusting them, and instead of butchering them, he calmly took away their power while leaving them their dignity. He didn't wait to see whether his friends would betray him, because he already knew the answer history had screamed for 50 years. Given the means and the moment, they would. So he removed the means kindly before the moment could come. That's the mastery. Never put too much trust in friends, especially the ones who helped you win. The people who lifted you up have proven they have the strength to lift up someone else. Zhao's genius was seeing his greatest supporters as his greatest risk and handling them before they became his ruin. So, 3 emperors worth of history, 1 law. Now let's make it usable. You're not running a Byzantine court or a Chinese army. You're running your life, your career, your relationships. Here's how this actually applies to you. First, separate friendship from work. Keep friends for what friendship is good for: warmth, loyalty, someone to talk to. But when you need a job done, hire for skill and competence, not closeness. The moment you put a friend under you at work, you've introduced the debt, the imbalance, and the resentment. And you'll usually lose the friendship too, because no friendship survives cleanly once one answers to the other. Second, watch the people you've given the most to. It feels backwards, which is why it's powerful. Your instinct is to relax around people you've helped. Surely they're grateful. But gratitude curdles into debt, and debt into resentment. The person you promoted or rescued is the one quietly measuring the gap between you. Don't be paranoid. Be aware. Keep your eyes open widest toward the people who owe you the most. Third, don't rush to crush an enemy. Ask first whether you can use one. The crude move is to destroy him. The refined move is to ask whether his interests could line up with yours. A common rival, a shared goal, a problem you both need solved. An enemy you win over becomes more committed than a friend because he's proving the alliance was earned. You destroy an enemy most completely when you turn him into a partner. And understand why he outperforms your comfortable insiders. He's hungry. He doesn't assume your loyalty. He's trying to earn a place. Fourth, don't fear a few rivals. They keep you sharp. If your whole world is friends and agreement, you get soft and stop growing. A worthy opponent forces you to stay alert and keep improving. That friction is a gift. It's what keeps your edge. And underneath it all, one principle. Base your bonds on interest, not just affection. Affection changes with mood. A friend can cool, get envious, drift. Shared self-interest is stable. As long as you both want the same outcome, you can rely on each other, enemy or friend. Read where someone's real interest point, and you'll predict them far better than by asking whether they like you. Now, before you walk away thinking the answer is to trust no one and treat every friend as a suspect, stop. Because that reading of this law will wreck your life, and you need to understand where the rule breaks down. This law is a warning, not a way to live. Take it too far, and you become the paranoid ruler who trusts no one, sees a knife behind every kind gesture, and ends up utterly alone, which is its own ruin. Here's the cruel irony. Treating loyal people like traitors is one of the surest ways to create the betrayal you feared. Suspicion, when the other person feels it, breeds the resentment that turns a friend into an enemy. You can manufacture your own Basil by watching for one too closely. Because not every friend is a Basil, and not every gift becomes a debt. Real loyalty exists. Some people will stand by you for reasons that have nothing to do with what they can extract. And if you burn those relationships down out of strategic coldness, you've traded something rare for a rule of thumb. This law describes a tendency in human nature, not an iron certainty that everyone you love will turn on you, and the risk runs the other way too. Using enemies has a sharp edge pointed back at you. An enemy you've won over is still an enemy underneath, aligned with you only while your interests overlap. Talleyrand was useful to Napoleon right up until he wasn't, and then he helped bury him. Build your whole position on former enemies bound by nothing but interest, and the same calculation that brought them will carry them away the instant the math changes. So hold both truths at once. Don't be naive. Closeness creates access, favors create debts, and the people nearest you are best positioned to hurt you. But don't be poisoned either. The goal isn't to have no friends. It's to see clearly, know the difference between friendship and strategy, keep them in separate places, and never assume that because you like someone, they've stopped acting in their own interest. The master isn't the one who trusts no one. It's the one who never mistakes affection for a guarantee. So here's where this leaves you. You're already in this game, whether you chose to play it or not. Every job, every partnership, every friend you bring into your work, you're making a bet about trust, and until now, you may have been making it blind, assuming the people who like you are the people who are safe. The Byzantine emperor made that bet. He gave his friend everything, right up to a crown, and it cost him his life in his own bed. The difference between you and him isn't power or armies. It's that now you know the rule he didn't. Watch your friends more carefully than your enemies. The favors you give don't buy loyalty. They can buy resentment. Keep friendship and business in separate rooms. And when an enemy appears, don't reach for the sword first. Ask whether that person, with something to prove, might become the most useful ally you have. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think back over your own life and find the moment this law was operating and you didn't see it. The friend you helped who slowly turned cold. The favor that somehow made things worse. The rival who, once you worked together, became fiercely loyal. Everyone has one. Drop it in the comments. The honest ones are what other people learn the most from. If this changed how you see even one relationship in your life, subscribe, because we're breaking down the real rules of power one at a time, exactly like this. No fluff, just the mechanism and the story that proves it. And leave with this, the whole law in a single breath. Your enemies you keep in sight. It's your friends who get close enough to reach the lock.